Our final storyteller has been featured on the Moth Radio Hour, the Moth Main Stage, and she is the author of my absolute favorite memoir. It's called Burn Down the Ground, and I'm so excited to have her back. Please give a very warm welcome to Kambri Crews.
So I grew up in a deaf family. My mom is deaf, my dad is deaf, a lot of aunts and uncles, my grandparents, almost everybody except for me and my brother were all born deaf. This prompts a lot of questions, so let's just go ahead and answer the top 3 FAQs, get that out of the way, okay? Yes, I know sign language. Number 2, I know how to talk because I'm not deaf. And no, I don't know Braille. Never learned that. Yeah, another thing, people, when they hear this about my family, they're like, oh my gosh, your whole family, I'm so sorry. Oh, even your mother? Bless your heart. I'm like, bless my heart. Bitch, I said they were deaf, not dead. Think about it for a second. Your parents cannot hear what you're doing. What's wrong with this situation? Nothing. Our trailer was the place to hang out. We got to listen and watch whatever we wanted to on television, radio, music, didn't matter if the lyrics be damned, as loud as we wanted, as late into the middle of the night as we wanted. We learned how to talk without moving our mouths so we could have full conversations right in front of our parents. Hey, after dinner, I'm going to sneak out and go hang out with Eddie. You cover for me, okay? Sure, I gotcha. Yeah. The other thing that I hear sometimes, sorry, I'm a little nervous. I haven't really told this story except a couple of times, and so I'm starting off with a lot of laughs, but I am a little, scared. I'm a scared of a Sharon. Thank you. Thank you. Anyway, so a lot of times people wanted to know, was your house must have been really quiet, right? Quite the opposite. Actually, deaf people really don't understand how loud they can be. Everything from bodily functions to beeps on a microwave, the banging of pots and pans and clanging of dishes and cabinet doors and slamming, it all becomes just sort of white noise of life to a coda, a child of deaf adults like myself. And so I had become accustomed to just tuning out this life's white noise. And so I never heard really anything. I slept through everything. I used to sleep with speakers in my bed with the volume turned up to 10 and would still sleep through the alarm. Just tuned it all out. So I also never heard my parents fight as a result of this. I guess because they were deaf, they fought behind closed doors, and I just tuned out any racket that they may have made behind closed doors. But one night, I did hear them fight. It was August 15th, 1988, and it was about 2, 3 in the morning, and something woke me up, which should have been a clue that something was terrible, because I usually slept through everything. But like that girl in the movie who's in her underwear and a t-shirt and goes to investigate, I went to investigate. I looked into my mom's bedroom, and she was laying on the floor, and my dad was straddling her with his arm cocked back, ready to punch. And my mom saw me in the doorway, so she turned her head a little bit, and just that fraction of a move, my dad's fist hit the floor instead of her face. And hearing his knuckles just crack on that concrete, it was covered with this really cheap carpet. It was just thunderous and stunning. And I started backing up out of the doorway. My parents scrambled to their feet, started coming out. Everyone was screaming and crying. My dad was threatening to kill her and then kill himself. And now I had never seen my dad act like this. He'd never spanked me, never raised a finger to me, never yelled at me really, ever. So seeing all this, it was so frightening. I tore away, ran to my bedroom, and I called 911. And now my first instinct was to protect my dad, because in the deaf community, you would hear stories all the time about how deaf people would be mistakenly shot dead by the police because they hadn't listened to the officer's commands. They didn't hear the officer say to put your hands up or drop the weapon, stop right there, and bam, shot, killed, dead. So I made sure that the 911 operator knew that my dad was deaf and that he might not listen to their commands, but I was there and I would take care of it, and please don't shoot him. The cops, I tell them, my parents, the cops are on their way, so they gather their senses and sit at the dining room table and wait for the cops to come. And that's when I noticed there are holes punched all over the apartment, just tons of fist-sized holes. And I think maybe that's what woke me up, because that was not a white noise of life that I was used to. Well, I don't know, but when the cops get there, they don't care about the holes in the wall. They don't care what I had just witnessed. They don't care really about anything other than the status of my parents' relationship. Were they still married? Well, technically, yeah, they were still married, but my dad didn't even live there. Well, did he have personal belongings there? He did. He had some clothes and some toiletries, and half the furniture was practically his. He just hadn't moved it out of the house yet. But his name isn't on the lease. He doesn't even have a set of keys. Well, doesn't matter. They're married. He has belongings here. He has a right to be here. All we can really do is ask him to leave. Ask him, not tell him to leave. Now, this was 1988, so it's well before the Violence Against Women Act, years before the domestic violence laws would change. And in Texas, it was this weird, warped, don't ask, don't tell policy. What happens behind a family's closed doors is their business. We didn't see it. It didn't happen. Let's just ask him to leave. So we spent the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes, hour, I don't know, time kind of blew by, but trying to convince my dad to leave and go home, sleep it off. And finally, after a while, he does. And the cops assure me that they'll follow him home. They'll make sure that he's actually leaving, and he'll stay out of harm's way, our way. Even though my dad was clearly drunk, his eyes were red and bleary, and he stunk like a bar. But hey, the cops didn't care. I don't care. Get him out. And so they all left, and we shut the front door, locked it, and went to bed. I mean, my mom and I didn't even really talk, let alone hug. We just went to our respective bedrooms and went back to bed. It's really strange when I try to think, like, what transpired between us. Nothing. We just went to bed and pretended like nothing happened. And I had to go to work in the morning. And it's like 3 a.m. now, and I've got to wake up at 6. So I'm just trying to get to sleep, just get a few hours of sleep before I have to get up for work. And I'm laying there, and that's when I hear a tremendous crash. I jump up and look out my bedroom door, and my dad is charging down the hallway towards me. In one body slam, he's knocked the front door completely open. He's charging at me, and I run to my telephone, which is a rotary phone that I'd gotten for my 13th Christmas. And I go to call 911, and I gotta say, in the age of rotary phones, 9. What? Why 9? Make it 111. I don't know, but the 9 hasn't even gotten back to the original starting point. And my dad is already in my bedroom. He's got the cord in his hand, and he grabs it like he's cracking a whip, and he goes like that and rips it right out of the wall. He corrals me and my mom into the dining room and basically holds us hostage there over the course of several hours and starts interrogating my mother about who she's sleeping with. He's convinced that she's cheating on him, and who is it? And I thankfully have the option to avert my eyes so that I can at least give my mom a little bit of dignity, and plus I don't want to know these details about my parents' marriage. So I'm able to shield my eyes every now and then. I kind of look up to see what's happening. There's a little dust up, and if things got a little violent, I would scream Somebody call 911. Somebody call 911. Nothing. Hours would pass. The sun's come up. And my dad is still interrogating my mother. No one clearly has called 911. And eventually, my mom, the whole time, is stoic, not giving my dad anything. So it starts to grate on my dad, I guess, that she won't give him anything. So he turns his attention to me. And he wants to make sure that I know what a terrible human being my mother is, what a terrible wife. And he starts to graphically describe her sex life to me and ends up saying, your mother is an S-L-U-T slut. And I'm searching his face for a sign of, like, who is this person? Where is my father? Is he in there? And he's searching my face for a sign that I'm on his side. And he can tell that I'm not. And this makes him snap. And in one move, he grabs my mother by the throat, slams her against the wall, and starts choking her to death. And her feet are at least a foot off the ground, and her heels are digging and writhing around like she's trying to get some leverage on the wall, but her feet keep slipping on her nightgown. And she's got her hands around his wrists, and he's got his hands around her throat, and her vein starts to bulge, and her eyes are bugged out, and she starts turning all sorts of colors, and he will just not look away. He is so focused. So I'm grabbing a finger. I think if I could just grab a finger and bend it backwards, he'd have to let go from the pain, right? Just one finger. And as try as I might, I could not even get one finger. He was so strong, too strong. So I change tactics, and I get in between their faces, and I make my dad look at me. Look at me. It's Kambri, your baby girl. Look at me. Why are you doing this? Why? And him getting snapped out of that focused anger on my mom and looking at me, his baby girl, I can see his face change and his eyes come back to normal, and they start to well up with tears, so I keep trying, I'm your baby girl, why? And I just keep at it until finally he lets her go. And I raced to the phone in the dining room, thank God was a touch tone, and I called 911. And I heard the operator say, 911, what's your emergency? But my dad had come behind me and he grabbed the phone and put it back in its cradle. And now he's really pissed, and he grabs a knife, and he's got my mom's head pulled back with the knife like this. And the whole time the phone is ringing. 911 had called back. The lights had started flashing too, so I think he knew the jig was up, but then I had a choice of making a break for it or trying that baby daughter routine, and I just ran. And him seeing me grab the phone and seeing my mouth move saying he's back, he knew the jig was up. He threw the knife down, tried to make everything look normal again. But this time when the cops got there, they immediately arrested him, put the handcuffs on him, and as one officer is tending to my mother, the other one asks me if I wouldn't mind interpreting my father's Miranda rights. The 16-year-old teenage victim, you want me to interpret the Miranda rights? Okay, sure. You have the right to remain silent. And that's when the other officer interrupted and said, hey, maybe we can do that back at the station. Yeah, you think? Kind of important. They tromp off through the front door, and they left me and my mom to pick up the pieces. And once again, my mom and I didn't even talk about it. My dad got 4 years probation, and he was out of prison just a couple of days later. Somebody bailed him out. We didn't. He didn't have any money, so one of his family members maybe. And that meant he was free to stalk us. So we went into hiding because we had gotten evicted from our apartment for excessive noise disturbance. So somebody had heard me screaming, and they chose to call the apartment management instead of 911. So evicted, go into hiding. My dad is stalking us. and I start my senior year in high school. I ended up getting married, thank God, to a good guy. His name's Rob. If you're watching, he just saved a man from a burning semi. He's pretty cool. He was in the Navy, and I took his last name. I was still in high school when we got married. I graduated summa cum laude, but didn't go to college. Instead, I moved with him to Ohio, which is where he was from, and that cross-country move, without the internet and taking his last name, it was like this trailer trash witness protection program, you know? Homespun. Let's be nice and say a homespun. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not even trailer trash. Ours was repossessed. But that witness protection program that I entered myself into, it worked, you know? I got to just kind of transform my life. But the whole time, you know, my dad didn't get in trouble. My mom was acting like everything was okay. So was my family. The state of Texas didn't do anything to really stop this. It felt, and everybody, and I was angry, I was mad, and I was upset and depressed from not getting to go to college and having my dreams and my life turned upside down. And but everybody kept saying, like, oh, your dad wants to talk to you. Why don't you talk to him? Oh, he didn't mean to hurt you. He wasn't, you know, it was just, I was the collateral damage of this really ugly night behind closed doors. Oh, that was in the past. Why can't you forgive him? And I felt like the world was gaslighting me. I'm like, no, this happened. I want justice. How can you not get justice after something like this? But I kind of caved into the peer pressure of accepting my dad back into my life again, even though he had done nothing to earn my trust or my forgiveness. But, you know, letters here and there, a sporadic phone call here or there, and maybe 4 or 5 visits over the course of 14 years. I really don't even know. And I made my way to New York, divorced Rob in the Navy, but we're still friends. He saved that guy. I know that from Facebook. We're Facebook friends. And then I was here in New York. I was out with Mark Cuban, of all people, partying. Yeah, he and I were hanging out in the back of a cab. And 1,542 miles away, my dad was stabbing another woman. And bam, like sniffing salts, man, it was all back. I was awoken to all that past trauma and all that past anger, and I wanted justice. I wanted justice, and I wanted it now, and I wanted answers, and I demanded it from all the people around me. And he went to prison for 20 years, and that's a lot of what the book is about, but eventually, you know, it's like, well, I wanted justice, and I got it. And now everyone knows, hey, I was telling the truth, and what happened that night was real, and it did happen to me. But this justice came at the expense of this other woman. And now with Dr. Ford, I feel like throughout history, justice always comes at the expense of other women. These kind of sacrificial lambs that get put out to slaughter. And Dr. Ford is just this latest example. But by us all telling our stories and collectively coming together and making demands and being loud and maybe a little excessively noisy, we can make a disturbance. Thank you.
Yum's the word.